The wait is over. Dive into Audible's most anticipated collection, The Best of 2025, featuring top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals across all genres. Our editors have carefully curated this year's must-listens, from brilliant hidden gems to the buzziest new releases. Every title in this collection has earned its spot. This is your go-to for the absolute best in 2025 audio entertainment. Whether you love thrillers, romance, or nonfiction, your next favorite listen awaits. Discover why there's more to imagine when you listen at audible.com/bestoftheyear.
Welcome to the AI Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Jaeden Schafer. Today on the podcast, I have the pleasure of being joined by Jim Spignardo. He is the Director of Cloud Strategy and AI at ProArch, where he helps companies build, manage their clouds and AI projects. He spent more than 20 years working with teams around the world to improve how they use data and technology. And he is someone that, from what I've seen, gives really clear practical advice on helping organizations adopt AI and helps them do that without taking too many risks. So welcome to the show today, Jim.
Great to be here, Jaeden. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, super excited to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about what got you into this space and I guess what you're excited about as far as like what ProArch is doing, how they're kind of tackling this problem.
Sure, yeah. I've been working with ProArch for almost 9 years now. I originally started as a senior strategic consultant, working with our customers on modernization efforts, data transformation efforts in the cloud space, and took many different positions within the organization, leading various teams to make sure that we kind of were aligned in that strategy. Probably, about 3 years ago with the advent of ChatGPT, I really started to take an interest in that technology. We are a Microsoft partner, so Copilot was something that was available to us to start using. And we quickly realized we needed to come up with a strategy ourselves of how to best implement this technology to be successful, but also to really start to infuse a culture of AI within our staff, within our processes, so that we could really take the most advantage of that. And so over time, that also translated into helping our customers. And so what I'm most excited about is, it's hard not to wake up a day in this field and not be excited because there's always something new that's being announced. But I do think that we are finally at that point. I saw kind of a transformation collective light bulb that went off probably about 6 months ago. And now companies are starting to truly understand what is possible with these tools. And now coming to us and asking ProArch, how do we get started here? How do we make something meaningful from this? Because there's a lot of opportunity to also do something very wasteful and spend a lot of money and not see a lot of results. So that's kind of where we stand today.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, based off of that, like, let's say a company does come to you and they're interested in getting started. I'm sure like a lot of people that are listening would be interested in this as well. What do you think is one of from what you've seen, what's one of the biggest things that companies get wrong when they try to start implementing this?
Yeah, I think one of the first things they'll always say is, well, what tool should we use? And it's really that's not the question at all, because it's almost irrelevant to a degree. To a degree, it's really of what are we trying to solve for? What is the big obstacles that are in our way and are preventing us from hitting our objectives as an organization? Whether that's financial growth, if you're a for-profit organization, or whether it's being able to serve more in your community, if you're a non-for-profit. So it's really making sure that you have a clear idea of what you're hoping to accomplish or what you're hoping to solve for. Then we can kind of back into the conversation and say, okay, let's map that out. Let's talk about what that process looks like. What departments or groups in your organization are dependent on that process? Where does it have integration with other things in your organization? And then we can start mapping out what kind of AI tools could be applied to take away some of the routine stuff initially, right? Because those are the really kind of easy, low-hanging fruit, high-impact types of things that AI is really good at. Taking away the routine things that are fed consistent data. And then over time, as they get their footing under them, start to really dig into some of the bigger problems with system integration and data challenges, saying, how do we solve for these? This may take a little bit longer, but it's worth going after if it's going to vastly improve the outputs of that organization.
100%. Like, as far as like the security side of it goes? Because I hear this all the time from people. It's like one of the
Yeah.
big things people bring up. What are some of the security risks when it comes to AI that most people don't realize maybe they're exposed to that they should be aware of?
Well, just certainly there's a lot. We also have a managed security practice at ProArch. So our team is constantly looking at this. We do have solutions to help organizations put their arms around it. Probably one of the biggest risks out there is not essentially recognizing that these tools, whether you've sanctioned them or not, already exist in your organization.
Mhm.
That they're being used because the value proposition is too high for people to ignore. They're willing to go against either stated or unstated policy
Yeah.
and use these things because they know it's going to help them be more efficient. It's going to make them have better quality of output. So you have to recognize that first off, and you have to ensure that you have some AI usage adoption policy that clearly states what is and what is not appropriate for the use of these tools. The biggest thing that we see and that the biggest risk is taking either regulated data or sensitive data and feeding it to a personal use chatbot or some other generative AI system that does not have a good security track record, and potentially seeing that data leaked to the web and causing reputational damage to your organization. We are very clear that you do not want to be using uncontrolled AI in that manner, whatever the case may be. And from there, it really becomes a matter of ensuring that you keep visibility into the shadow AI. So using tools like Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which can actually detect these tools in their use, give you a risk rating score, and then you can decide as an organization whether you want to sanction or unsanction, which is very powerful.
Okay, love that. And I think that's just a good like golden nugget for people interested in implementing stuff today. So you mentioned this, and I also feel the same way, where it's basically every day I wake up and I'm like super excited because there's all of these amazing new AI announcements that keep coming out. And I'm sure it's pretty easy for you and I to be excited, just given our field and what we're working on, to see all this stuff. From the people that you guys work with, because I know you guys consult with a lot of companies, you help AI implementation with a lot of companies. What are the things that they are most excited about? Like when you guys are talking with them, you kind of mentioned how everyone's like, what tools should I use? And you're like, okay, that's not what the question you should be asking. You should be asking like, what am I trying to solve? What am I trying to do?
Right.
So as you're sitting there consulting and helping people, what are they most excited about? And what are some of the things where they are, I don't know, like excited use cases from their end?
I think once we get to the conversation, once they get over the fact that, how do we prompt? How does this stuff work? How do I get good output? Once they get beyond those fundamentals and we introduce them to agents, that's when their minds start to really, their faces light up and they have 1,000 ideas of what they want to do. Some of them realistic, some of them a little unrealistic, some of them a little bit more in the future. But
Sure.
once they get an idea, understand that, well, wait a minute, this process that used to take us hundreds of hours a month, that really was just a very administrative, burdensome task. We can take elements of that and automate it, and also make sure that the quality and the output is more consistent. Just why aren't we doing this? Let's go. Let's build some agents. Let's address some of these challenges and put them in place. I think we're seeing right now just an explosion, even at our own organization. I would say 6 months ago, we had 4 or 5 agents that were deployed to various groups. I'm responsible for actually keeping track of the usage and adoption in our organization, reporting that to our executive team. And I just checked this week. We now have 36 agents deployed. And we now have people who were terrified of using this technology, where they're cracking up open Copilot Studio and going, okay, I'll figure it out. The technology has gotten that good where they're not as anxious about trying these things to see what's possible.
Yes, that's amazing. And I think I would agree with you. The agents is just like one of the most exciting things right now as far as what you're actually able to see a lot of results with. You did mention something, however, that I think a lot of people may have experienced, and I'm curious how you communicate this to like people that you work with. And that is essentially that you're like, and sometimes they have these ideas that are a little bit more in the future, meaning like agents can't literally replace you. They can't do everything.
Right. Yep.
What do you typically say to people when they're like, oh, man, these agents are so incredible. Maybe they see like a really good use case where it can automate something. I want it to do like everything that like my researcher typically does that like It's not really capable of, or maybe they give it like way too big of a scope. How do you talk to people about that? And maybe they're like, I tried to use it to do this thing and like it just didn't work. And they're giving it something way too big. How do you address that?
We want to try and keep them realistic about where the technology is in its development, but and understand that it still hallucinates. And if you don't have really good skills at prompting and guiding and creating instruction sets for agents, we will end up with poor quality output. But you also don't ever want someone driving these tools that doesn't have some sort of classic or formalized training in that subject matter,
Mm.
because we still need some oversight. I know that the term human in the loop is way overused, but we still want some level of human review and human accountability when it comes to the output of these tools. We've all heard the articles and stories on the web where you have these law offices where they used it to present an argument in the court, and half of it was all made up, right?
Hmm.
Sounded really awesome. They, and if it was actual case law, would have been an incredible argument to make, but it was just totally fabricated. And you don't want to have that type of egg on your face. And so it's important to also remember that what we're trying to get the agents to do is the dull, the draining, and distracting work, call them the 3Ds, so that we can leave for the humans the more higher level thinking stuff, where we can think more strategically and more creatively, and leave all of those types of things to AI, because right now that's what it really excels at. Not that
Yeah.
it can't handle creative things as well, but in the hands of a creative person, AI actually exhibits more creativity. You can't just take, for instance, if you're using a generative image solution, and you have someone who is a classically trained painter and can detailed description of what they're looking for, their output's going to be a lot better than handing this to someone who can barely draw a stick figure, right? Because they don't
Yep.
even have the language to express to AI what they want or what the output should look like.
Yep. 100%. For you personally, like, what are the things that you use AI for that save you time? I guess just to get people's wheels
Yeah.
spinning on some of these options.
A lot. Yeah. When I have a lot of large data sets, I do a lot of client assessments, and we have to go in and collect a lot of data and discover a lot of data. A lot of that is either stare and compare, which we prefer not to do, or it's automated exports of data. Instead of having to pour over Excel spreadsheets and reports, putting all of that data into a notebook or a project, and starting with what is the scope of work that we produce, what are the deliverables we have to produce, and then turning it loose on and saying, go through this data and find the things that are relevant, find the insightful things that we can present to a customer as recommendations. Look for the risks that are associated with this organization. Really good at that. Now, it still requires a lot of after the fact review, but it can do a great job with really reducing the amount of time and effort it takes for us to do those things. In addition to that, we've built quite a few agents to help our teams sift through information about our customers. So being in a managed service space, one big complaint that almost every MSP gets is every time I talk to someone, I feel like I have to explain our environment over again. Right? How come you just don't know what our environment is? Like, we just drop a chip in every single new person's head, and they understand all the companies that we deal with. And so we understood that whether that was a reasonable expectation or not by the customer, we needed to solve for that.
Yeah.
So we created a client insights agent. So anytime someone's going to get on a call or go to support a user, they have the ability to pull up this client insight agent, type in who the client is. It'll go reason across all of our M365 data for that client and actually give them a summary and report of the things that have been going on with that client over the last 6, 8, 12 months, whatever. And then they could put in, this is a support call, this is a sales call, whatever, and then kind of contextualize that information so that they can go into those meetings prepared, and so that they feel like they know enough to get by and not irritate the customer by saying, well, tell me a little bit about your environment. Well, what do you mean? You have data, you have documentation. Why do I have to tell you that?
Yeah. 100%. Okay. Well, love the tools and use cases. I always like to ask people that because I feel like I always think of new ideas when I hear what people are using AI for. One thing that I'm curious, I know you guys work a lot with AI and cloud. I'm curious why so many different companies are moving their AI systems across multiple clouds instead of just choosing one today.
I think it's really kind of the best of breed. They're trying to find the tool that does the thing that they're trying to get done the best. In fact, I was just reading an article today, this concept of we're just going to keep building bigger and bigger models that can cover every single possible scenario and solve for everything. We're chasing AGI, artificial general intelligence, when in reality we should be chasing more purpose-built solutions to solve for very specific things. So if you're in the healthcare field, right, do you want to use ChatGPT to analyze radiology images? No. You want a system that's specifically built that understands the use cases for a radiologist department and can look at images and can be trained on a very huge amount of data. So you want a very specific niche product. So I kind of think that's you're finding that there is some level of segmentation when it comes to choosing solutions. But also there's also the factor of, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. There's also that thought process. Mm-hmm. So if, for instance, we become too dependent on one particular product or solution, then we might be missing an opportunity to learn something about something else that's coming up. As I mentioned before, huge users of Copilot. We're a Microsoft partner, but our development team really enjoys using Claude. Claude is really good at coding. Thankfully, Microsoft's made some agreements, and now Claude will become part of Copilot, but we allowed them to use that. I know I still use ChatGPT on a regular basis because there are certain things I feel it does better or more efficiently. At the same time, when we're looking at other tools like Gemini or Notebook LM, there's just some very specific ways these things work better than others. And so you shouldn't lock yourself into saying, well, we're going to only use this product exclusively.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And I think at the end of the day, yes, these different models all have different strengths and weaknesses. And like I hear a lot of times a company is like, oh, I can't use XYZ tool because my organization is only approved like Copilot or only approved XYZ. And I'm like, oh man, that's so unfortunate because there are so many other tools that are really good at different specific things that would help them a lot. So I love that you guys advise on that. What is something that you think is going to shock people in regards to where AI is going to be in the next number of years? Maybe some changes we'll see in the world, maybe some of the capabilities. What is one of the most shocking things you think people will be surprised by?
I would say surprised, but I think there's already some of this is already happening. But when it comes to purely AI generated content, there's already been a certain level of acceptance that it's as good or almost as good as some of the stuff that's created by just purely human content creators. The example I'll give you is, and again, the purists out there will probably, poo-poo this to death, but there are already AI artists on Spotify that are getting millions and millions of listens. And so when it comes to those purists who say it's garbage, it's slop, you can't ignore millions and millions of people, right? If it's enough for millions of people to listen to and think it's good enough, then it's probably pretty good. And so what I think you're going to see is more and more of this, more and more content that kind of shocks and surprises of how good it is in the hands of very skilled people. Right? I think that AI gets a real bad rap because a lot of times it's given over to people who don't have a very good skill set using it. And yes, you end up with all kinds of junk. There's crazy videos with Sora, with people with two arms or, whatever the case may be, or a dog that backflips and all of a sudden is transformed into a two-headed dog. But I do think that eventually we'll start to accept that this is a valid form of content creation, and we don't need to feel shame necessarily that we're enjoying it because it wasn't purely human created.
Okay, I love that. I think that is. It's true. It's wild, the stuff that's getting created today. But in the right hands, you actually can be so much more creative with all of this stuff. As we're wrapping up the show today, Jim, I would love to ask you for your one piece of most critical advice if you could give to enterprises or businesses, people looking at implementing AI and rolling it out inside of the organization. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
My biggest piece of advice is don't be caught up in the rat race and feel like you have to do something sooner than you're ready to do it. Because that usually leads to overspend and unsuccessful projects. And the key to kind of getting your arms around this, and very few organizations, I should say that, but more and more companies are kind of understanding this as needed, is you have to get a governance council stood up in your organization that is representative of the various interested parties within your organization. So we have one on the chair, but our CEO is the executive sponsor. We have legal in there. We have our HR department. We have Our developers sit on that. Our CISO is a member of that. And so by doing that, you have a group of individuals who are dedicated to moving the organization forward in the AI journey, but also looking at it from every angle, right? Are we doing things responsible legally? Are we making sure that we're meeting all of our regulatory obligations? If we're picking initiatives, does the CISO get to review it to make sure it's safe and it's not putting the organization at a undue risk? Is HR helping our folks become trained and knowledgeable and skilled in the use of these tools, right? So it becomes a overall initiative by the organization. So start there, build one, and start having conversations and start making a plan and also find people who gravitate towards this technology and are very excited about it. That's how I ended up where I was. This was not an area I ever thought I would be leading. And again, because this world didn't exist 3 years ago. But I think that's probably the advice I would give to an organization.
And honestly, phenomenal advice. Jim, thank you so much for jumping on the show today. Really appreciate picking your brain and hearing what you guys are working on. If people are interested in contacting you or learning more about ProArch, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. They can follow me on LinkedIn. Just search for Jim Spignardo. I'm the only Jim Spignardo that I'm aware of in the world.
Okay.
I produce about 3 articles a week on LinkedIn and post quite a bit of other stuff too. From there, you'll probably run into quite a few of my other colleagues in other IT domains. Also, visit ProArch.com. It's PROARCH. Everyone calls it ProArch, but that's on us. It's actually pronounced ProArch for architects. And we usually have tons of blog posts, webinars that we're hosting. We also have guides that you can download to help your organization. We have a return on investment calculator for Copilot that you can plug some numbers in and figure out what it would take to actually get to a positive state by buying into that solution.
Thank you so much, Jim. We'll leave links in the description for anyone listening. To all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning into the podcast today. Make sure to leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and we hope you all have an amazing rest of your day.